Got my eyes straight ahead, got my head in the game. With the red light on, I'm just waiting for the change. Keep my head down low.
I've heard this argument put out there quite a few times by Donald J. Trump, by Republicans, and that's if they can do this to Trump, well, then they can do it to you. They can do it to anyone. If they can come after him like this, well, there's no stopping them if they ever want to come after you. And it does feel a little like fear mongering, a little. However, when you look at the charges that they bring, that they brought, and then you look at the way that they've handled issues with Biden, with his son Hunter, alleged bribery issues. I say alleged like that in air quotes because it seems pretty obvious, and yet they still seem to be overlooking all these things. You look at what's happened with the former, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, the things that she was doing with the emails, okay, and yet very similar. The way I understand it, it's very similar to some of the charges or the indictments they brought against Trump, and yet they chose to overlook what Hillary was doing. So this argument about about if they can do it to him, well, they can do it to anyone. One thing that I learned while I was in the police, especially when I was doing work at the Triple C, you learn that you really got to look at the detail when you're looking at legislation, when you're looking at the laws of the land, when you're looking at charging people. You've really got to look at the laws. You've really got to look at the fine detail. This is and the interpretation, how people can interpret things that are happening. This is how lawyers make their money, I think. They all argue about interpretation. Someone comes and says, well, lawyer might put this argument out there saying, well, this is what the law says, this is what legislation says, you've done the wrong thing. The other person will come back and say, well, we look at the law, we look at the legislation, we look at the wording, and we say, well, we interpret it this way, so we believe that we're in the right, and we've done no wrong. This is the way we interpret it. And then it goes back and forward. Thousands of dollars are spent, and it's like, who gets to decide how it gets interpreted? And then the judge sits over it and says, oh. So that's my basic understanding. Okay, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just saying that's the way I saw it happening. Why I'm talking about all this is I think the Democrats, they have shown their hand, what they want, what their actual intention is for Donald J. Trump. And hey, you tell me if I'm being a bit you tell me if I'm if this isn't a wild conspiracy theory. But the Democrats they've indicted Trump again. It's 4 more times, I think, and this has all been over January 6th. That terrible, terrible day for the American Republic. So the thing is, this latest indictment is being tried in Washington, D.C. This town is not it's not the best town for Trump. They don't love the people of DC. Don't love Trump. The last lot of charges were scheduled. They've been to be tried in Florida. Florida, apparently, I've never been to Florida, never been to the US, but it's more of a place where they'll be in favor of Trump. Okay. I'm not sure how that works. I've got to be honest with you. I'm not sure how that works. It's obviously a little different in Australia. I would have thought in Australia you'd get the same kind of, if you're looking at federal charges, you'd get the same kind of outcome no matter whereabouts. That's what I would have thought anyway. But I'm just, maybe a little naive. The other thing that makes this probably a little more noteworthy, newsworthy, than all the other issues, besides the fact that it's getting, it's going to be heard in Washington, is that one of the punishments for the charges in this case is actually death. Actually death. Just let that sink in for 1 minute. Let it sink in. One of the charges against Trump includes the death penalty. This is my theory. They want to kill Donald J. Trump. It's you might be sitting there going, Jay Fallon, that's pretty wild. You know, supposedly they were trying to undermine, obviously, his campaign 2016. They were trying to spine him, but they did spine him. They tapped Trump towers, impeach him, constantly trying to impeach him for nonsensical, weird, silly little issues. I think were silly, but regardless of all that, they just want him dead. That is their end goal. And I think they have just shown their hand that this is their end goal. So, according to a section, I'll read this, section 18, according to 18 of the United States Codes, section 241, one of the charges is conspiracy against rights and includes a penalty of up to 10 years in federal prison. But it also says that if death has resulted from the acts committed in violation of that section, of this section 241, or if such acts, including kidnapping or an attempt to kidnap, aggravated sexual abuse, or an attempt to commit aggravated sexual abuse, or any attempt to kill, they shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for any term of years or for life or both, or may be sentenced to death. So, look, this is the issue, and you can say, people can say, well, it's how likely is it that it'll go that far? It's how crazy it that some of these charges have already gone as far as they have. The Democrats have been putting out this narrative. I've spoken a lot before about how here in Australia, the media will always put out this false narrative that the narrative, this is the way they want the story to come across. So they'll put out a narrative. The narrative might be, it might be obviously fake, but they'll just keep putting it out there, trying to put out this false narrative. Eventually it gets momentum. People start believing these things. They've been arguing since the first day that all this happened, that Trump was responsible for death, that Trump was responsible for what happened on January 6th. But like I said, if you read, it's always in the fine print. When it comes to legislation, when it comes to laws, you have to read the fine print and think, well, how are people going to interpret this? How can this be interpreted? So you read 18 of the USC, the United States, the United States Codes, section 241. And you can say, okay, well, death did actually result from these actions, from the rioting or the protests, whatever you want to call it. So going by the narrative that the Democrats have put out, but the narrative that the left-leaning media have been running with Trump, you've got the notion that Trump is responsible, that they've been putting out this narrative that he committed these acts, he's responsible. He's responsible for the death of someone. Therefore, the death penalty is on the table. They want to kill him. It's not enough. It's not enough for him to drop out of the next presidential race. It's not enough to put him in prison. It's not enough to embarrass him. It's not enough to take money off him. They want to kill him. That's my theory. That's what I believe. Let me know what you think. The US on a very slippery slope. And I think this has bigger ramifications for anyone who believes in freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of thought. Let me know what you think. Slippery slope.
Fuel a desire that will take me high.